10,000 meters above the North Atlantic. The first-class cabin of K-Air Flight KA-86, en route from New York's JFK to Incheon, was steeped in a rich, languid silence. The scent of premium leather seats, the faint aroma of champagne, and the low hum of the jet engines created an atmosphere perfectly isolated from the outside world. Here, time seemed to flow more slowly, and was far more precious than the time on the ground. Sitting by the window in seat 1A, Kang Hae-jun let out a weary sigh and closed his eyes. The chairman of Jinsung Group, one of South Korea's top 5 conglomerates. His name was always preceded by titles like the youngest, the shrewd, and the charismatic. His week-long trip to New York had been consumed by grueling merger and acquisition negotiation. He had fought a no-holds-barred battle against the greedy wolves of Wall Street, and in the end, he had emerged victorious. But the victory had come at a heavy price, pushing his mind and body to their absolute limit. Why do you suspect that place? His sharp jawline, high-bridged nose, and tightly sealed lips revealed a personality that tolerated no flaws, even in a moment of rest. His impeccably tailored suit remained uncreased, but the subtle tremor of his eyelids betrayed the extreme fatigue he was feeling. He briefly considered taking the sleeping pills his secretary had packed, but his aversion to artificial sleep in an unfamiliar place made him quickly abandon the thought. Instead, he summoned a flight attendant and asked for a glass of water. "It's a hunch," Yoon Seo-ah replied curtly. "Chairman, I'll get that water for you right away." Among Daewha Chemical's many subsidiaries, the R&D spending for Chemitech is unusually opaque. Also, the lab is in an extremely remote location, and the security level is abnormally high, as if they are hiding some important secret. The voice of the chief flight attendant was gentle, yet it carried a somewhat mechanical tone. Kang Tae-jun gave a small nod without turning his head. To him, the world was divided into 2 types of people, those who were useful to him, and those who were not, and most people fell into the latter category. Kang Tae-jun decided to trust her hunch. He immediately summoned Kim Min-jun and instructed him to gather in-depth information about Chemitech. Just then, another flight attendant walked into his line of sight. Yoon Seo-ah. Her name tag bore a name he hadn't seen before. Unlike the other attendants who displayed exaggerated smiles and gestures to appease the wealthy passengers, her movements were fluid and precise, her gait was calm and composed, and her attention to the passengers was meticulous yet never servile. She seemed to be a well-trained observer, quietly reading the entire cabin's atmosphere. From that day on, Yoon Seo-ah became consumed with the investigation. Working day and night, her office transformed into a massive information analysis center. Dozens of monitors displayed complex data and relationship diagrams, and the walls were covered with photos and maps related to the case. Yoon Seo-ah was busy with her duties in the galley, located at the boundary between first and business class. Her gaze briefly landed on Kang Tae-jun's section, or more accurately, on the middle-aged man in seat 3D diagonally across from him, Park Jin-woo. He was the chairman of a prominent chemical company, and the very man who had fiercely competed against Jinsung Group until the end in the recent New York acquisition. One early morning, as she compared thousands of data points, her eyes stopped at a single point. It was a corporate credit card statement from Daewha Chemicals. The statement belonged to Park Jin-woo's assistant during their New York trip. Most of the expenses were normal, like meals and transportation, but there was a single, large sum spent at a high-end bar in Manhattan. With an expression of triumph, as if a victorious general, Park Jin-woo savored his wine. A look of grotesque satisfaction hung on his lips, almost unpleasant to behold. While everyone knew that Kang Tae-jun had ultimately secured the deal, Park Jin-woo's demeanor was far from that of a loser. On the contrary, he was filled with a strange confidence, as if he were certain of a different, more profound victory. Yoon Seo-ah couldn't tear her eyes away from his unnatural expression. Her keen intuition sensed something cold and dangerous hidden behind that smile. There was nothing strange about that on its own. But Yoon Seo-ah's keen eyes noticed the time and place of the payment, and she found another person who had been there at that exact time, and placed the chief flight attendant of flight KA-086. A photo of him, taken at that very bar that night, was on his personal social media with the caption, "Having a drink with a friend in New York after a long time." Kang Tae-jun took the glass of water the chief attendant brought him and drank half of it in one gulp. The cold, clear water soothed his parched throat, offering a momentary release from the tension. He closed his eyes again, trying to fall asleep. But at that very moment, a strange sensation washed over his body. Two different pieces of information clicked together in her mind. At first, he thought it was just simple dizziness. But then his breathing became shallow and rapid. It felt as if a giant hand was crushing his chest, suffocating him. A cold sweat poured over him, and his vision began to blur. Instinctively, he yanked at his tie to loosen it, but the pressure on his throat would not go away. "Found you," she whispered. Ugh! It couldn't be a coincidence. Park Jin-woo's assistant and the flight attendant. The first link connecting the two, the thread of truth that had been hidden in the darkness, was finally revealing itself. She immediately picked up the phone to call Kang Tae-jun. It was time to launch the counterattack. A low groan escaped his lips. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he reached for the call button, but his arm betrayed him. Falling limply to his side, his body began to convulse. As he thrashed violently on the seat, the other passengers finally noticed something was wrong and started to scream. Taewa Chemicals Group chairman's office. Park Jin-woo threw the report on his desk in a fit of rage. The documents scattered messily across the mahogany surface. Oh my God, look at him. What's happening? A doctor? Is there a doctor on board? He's not dead. He's back at the company as if nothing happened. The quiet calm of the first-class cabin instantly devolved into chaos. The chief attendant rushed over, his face pale with shock, unable to do anything. His face was flushed with anger. When he first heard that Kang Tae-jun had collapsed on the plane, he had believed his plan was a perfect success. But Kang Tae-jun had miraculously survived and returned to his position as chairman of Jinsung Group, as if nothing had happened. "Chairman, are you all right? My apologies." "Chairman, we had no idea this would happen." His assistant's voice trembled with anxiety. His voice trembled with terror. He clumsily shook Kang Tae-jun's shoulder, but it only made things worse. The convulsions intensified, and a white foam appeared at the corners of his mouth. Cut the excuses. What about that flight attendant? Did she get the money? Everyone, please step back. Well, she has been out of contact since the incident. We can't even trace her bank account. Then, a firm and calm voice cut through the confusion. It was Yoon Seo-ah. Without a moment's hesitation, she pushed through the crowd and approached Kang Tae-jun. Her eyes were no longer those of a gentle flight attendant. They were the eyes of a professional, filled with clear judgment and certainty. "You idiot! Chief, contact the captain immediately and request an emergency landing at the nearest airport. And please bring me the in-flight medical kit. Quickly." Park Jin-woo threw the ashtray at the wall. The sound of smashing ceramics echoed loudly. Unexpected variables had begun to meddle with his perfect plan. The unknown flight attendant who had saved Kang Tae-jun, and the chief attendant who had disappeared without a trace. He couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. Her voice carried an undeniable authority. The terrified chief attendant, as if a soldier receiving orders, immediately turned and headed for the cockpit. The other attendants also began to follow her instructions, calming the passengers and creating space. Did Kang Tae-jun catch on? Yoon Seo-ah knelt down and examined Kang Tae-jun. His pupils were dilated, and his breathing was shallow and erratic. His skin was deathly pale, but his lips were an eerily bluish hue. The symptoms were subtly different from a typical heart attack or stroke. Anxiety washed over him, but he quickly shook his head. There was no evidence. Even if he were suspicious, he couldn't attack him with only circumstantial evidence. He could even use this situation to his advantage. Since Kang Tae-jun was alive, he would have to take him down in a more decisive way. He needs to maintain an open airway, recline the chair all the way back. The greedy fire in his eyes ignited again. His goal was not simply to eliminate Kang Tae-jun, it was to take over the JS1 new drug project, the next-generation biotech project that Jinsung Group had been working on for years. The value of this new drug, which was expected to open a new chapter in Alzheimer's treatment, was estimated to be in the tens of trillions of won. She gave the order to another attendant, then lifted Kang Tae-jun's chin and cleared his airway. Her hands were swift and precise, moving without hesitation, as if she had done this hundreds of times before. As she administered first aid, her eyes unconsciously flickered back to Chairman Park Jin-woo. "It's even better. Since he's alive, he can receive the bigger gift I have prepared." Park Jin-woo's face showed a feigned expression of shock, just like the other passengers. But beneath that act, Yoon Seo-ah once again caught a fleeting glimpse of something else, a cold satisfaction flickering in the depths of his eyes. It was a momentary flash, but it didn't escape her notice. He was enjoying the situation. enjoying Kang Tae-jun's suffering. A treacherous smile once again appeared on Park Jin-woo's face. He began to devise a new plan. This time, his target was Kang Tae-jun's weakest link, his newest weapon, Yoon Seo-ah. This is no mere accident, she thought. I heard Kang Tae-jun recently appointed a flight attendant from K-Air as his special aide, his savior from the plane. They say, he asked his assistant. A warning bell rang in her head. Her heart felt a sudden chill, but she didn't show any emotion. Saving the patient in front of her was the top priority. Yes, that's correct. Her name is Yoon Seo-ah. The unprecedented appointment has caused a lot of gossip within the group. When the medical kit arrived, she skillfully pulled out an oxygen mask and placed it over Kang Tae-jun's face. As she prepared the automated external defibrillator, AED, her mind was racing. The water Kang Tae-jun had drunk just before collapsing. The symptoms had appeared within minutes of him drinking it. Old habits die hard. He still has a weakness for women. Good. We'll use her this time. I'll make Kang Tae-jun dismiss the woman he trusts most with his own hands. Her gaze fell on the glass of water on the table next to his seat. The transparent glass, still half full. It might be the only clue. His plan was cunning and cruel. He would hack and steal the core research data of JS1, then frame Yoon Seo-ah for the crime. A woman who had suddenly appeared from the outside and had been given the highest level of security clearance. There could be no more perfect condition for framing her as a corporate spy. Kang Tae-jun's convulsions subsided slightly, but his heart rate was still dangerously unstable. His fading consciousness caused his eyes to faintly turn toward her. He tried to muster the last of his strength to say something, but no sound came out. Yet, his eyes contained a desperate plea for help and a strong suspicion that something was very wrong. Like a king trying to protect his empire, he burned with fury toward this unseen enemy, even in his final moments. A few days later, the Jinsung group was in an uproar. That night, Jinsung Bio's impenetrable security server was breached. The clinical trial data for the JS1 project and other core technical information, on which the group's fate rested, had been leaked. It was an unprecedented scale of technology theft in the history of South Korea's corporate world. Yoon Seo-ah met his gaze and gave a small nod. It was a silent promise that said, "Don't worry, I will save you." The atmosphere on the top floor of Jinsung Group headquarters was as cold as ice. At the emergency board meeting, senior executives raised their voices, ready to tear Kang Tae-jun apart. She gestured to another attendant to bring her a clean plastic bag, out of sight of the others. Then, without anyone noticing, she carefully placed the glass Kang Tae-jun had drunk from inside it. Her movements were extremely cautious, as if to prevent a single fingerprint or any contamination. What in the world happened? Chairman A project that holds the group's future has been stolen. The captain says we are making an emergency landing in Anchorage, Alaska. We should arrive in about 40 minutes. The chief attendant shouted. What was the security team doing? 40 minutes. She had to keep this man alive for that long. Yoon Seo-ah continued to administer first aid, checking Kang Tae-jun's condition. Beads of sweat dotted her forehead, but her expression remained unfaltering. Kang Tae-jun listened to their accusations with a stern expression. Then, the head of the security team began his report with a trembling voice. The terror and chaos that had filled the first-class cabin were now slowly coming under control. Thanks to her calm and professional command, the passengers watched her with a mix of awe and anxiety. In the face of the overwhelming presence emanating from this slender, young flight attendant, they found themselves trusting and relying on her without even realizing it. After tracing the hacking route, it seems the intrusion originated not from the outside, but from the inside. And through it all, Park Jin-woo watched from behind his mask-like expression. His plan had been perfect. A special, untraceable poison, an unexpected seizure on an airplane. Kang Tae-jun would die of a heart attack, and the Jinsung group would be thrown into chaos. It would then be only a matter of time before he seized the project he so desired. All eyes in the conference room turned to him. But an unexpected variable had appeared: this unknown flight attendant. Her extraordinary response had bought Kang Tae-jun 40 minutes. Park Jin-woo's brow furrowed slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. He's going to die before he reaches the hospital anyway. What can a mere flight attendant do? He reassured himself and raised his wine glass again. Inside, what do you mean by that? He didn't know, however, that the mere flight attendant he was underestimating was about to crack his perfect plan and become the beginning of a storm that would shake a giant empire. The initial intrusion IP was confirmed to be from the terminal of the Special Aids Office. It was Ms. Yoon Seo-ah's personal IP. The plane tilted its massive body and began to descend sharply. Outside the window, the cold glaciers of Alaska faintly appeared. A man on the boundary between life and death, a woman determined to save him, and another man watching their fates unfold. Within the confines of the cabin, 10,000 meters above the ground, the curtain was quietly rising on a great drama. Suddenly, the conference room went silent as if a bucket of water had been thrown over it. All the executives' gazes were now on Kang Tae-jun. Their eyes were filled with blatant accusations and mockery, as if saying, "I knew this would happen." The look on their faces said that they should have known better than to give such a critical position to an unknown woman. Beep, beep, beep. That's not all. It was also confirmed that a large sum of money was deposited into an overseas alias account believed to be linked to Miss Yoon Seo-ah last night. The sharp beeping of the in-flight AED cut through the noise of the chaotic cabin. Yoon Seo-ah unbuttoned Kang Tae-jun's shirt and attached the cold pads to his chest. Her movements were swift and precise, without a single error. The murmur of the passengers, the frightened cries, didn't seem to reach her ears. In her world, there was only the patient in front of her and the perilous beeping that signaled his life was on the line. The security team's final report was the nail in the coffin. All circumstantial evidence pointed to Yoon Seo-ah as the culprit. Analyzing heart rhythm, everyone, stand back. That afternoon, in Kang Tae-jun's office, Yoon Seo-ah stood before him with a pale face. Kang Tae-jun sat at his desk, staring at her with eyes that burned with fury. Both of them knew that all the cameras and listening devices in the office were on. This was their own stage for a play. The AED's cold, mechanical voice instructed. Yoon Seo-ah briefly looked at Kang Tae-jun's face. Cold sweat streamed down his pale face, and his trembling eyelashes showed he was desperately fighting to hold on to life. "What in the world happened? Explain yourself. Ms. Yoon Seo-ah!" Kang Tae-jun's voice was filled with rage. He threw a stack of documents in front of her. "No shock advised. Continue to monitor the patient's condition. How could I have trusted you? You stabbed me in the back for a little money." Kang Tae-jun was lost in thought. The name was in the Jinsung Group's intelligence report, too, but it was just classified as a normal biotech subsidiary, with nothing special noted about it. "No, I swear, I have no idea someone has framed me." It was the result she had expected. Yoon Seo-ah's eyes sharpened. If it were a fatal arrhythmia like ventricular fibrillation, the AED would have immediately recommended an electric shock, but the machine determined that it wasn't a heart problem. This confirmed her suspicion, an external factor. It was highly likely to be a toxin that interfered with the nervous system and paralyzed the respiratory muscles. Yoon Seo-ah's voice trembled with desperation and injustice. Her eyes were filled with tears that threatened to spill over. It was an act, but she was genuinely furious and heartbroken. Maximize oxygen concentration and get a line ready for an intravenous injection. Framed when all the evidence points to you. This is how you repay me for saving my life. Get out of my sight right now. She gave the orders to another attendant and grabbed a manual resuscitator, or ambu bag. Kang Tae-jun's own breathing was becoming weaker. She pressed the mask firmly over his mouth and nose and began to squeeze the bag at a regular interval. Fresh oxygen was forced into his lungs with a rhythmic pressure. Her arms were slender, but her movements were precise and tireless. Like a machine, Kang Tae-jun stood up and grabbed her arm roughly. His grip was so strong it would leave a bruise, but at that moment, his thumb tapped her palm twice, a quick signal. It was their code for, according to plan. Sinking into a deep abyss of unconsciousness, Kang Tae-jun could faintly sense a light shining on him. Sounds were muffled, and his vision was blurry as if through a fog. But in all that chaos, one thing was perfectly clear. The face of a woman calmly moving above him. Her hair was neatly tied, sweat beaded on her white forehead, and most of all, her eyes were unwavering and strong. Yoon Seo-ah understood his signal and resisted even more desperately. He had lived his entire life surrounded by countless people, flatterers, fearful sycophants, and those who sought to use him, but never before had he entrusted his life entirely to a stranger. Ironically, he felt an absolute sense of trust in this unknown flight attendant, a feeling he had never experienced with any of his closest aides. She wasn't seeing him as Kang Tae-jun, the chairman of Jinsung Group, but only as a patient to be saved. "Chairman, please." Just believe me, I am not a traitor. Park. Jin. Woo. Silence. Effective today. Ms. Yoon Seo-ah is stripped of all her duties. Security team, escort Ms. Yoon Seo-ah out of here right now. Make sure she never sets foot in this building again. The last thing he had seen, that treacherous smile, flashed in his mind, the face of the chief attendant who handed him the water, and beyond him, the image of Park Jin-woo nodding with satisfaction. All the pieces were falling into place. This was no accident. It was a deliberate attack. He could not die like this. He couldn't let everything be taken away from him. He mustered his last ounce of will and struggled to open his eyes. His gaze found Yoon Seo-ah again. The evidence? The cup. His lips wouldn't move, but his eyes were desperately trying to speak. At Kang Tae-jun's thundering command, security guards rushed in and grabbed her arms. She struggled until the last moment, calling out his name, but he coldly turned away from her. Yoon Seo-ah was thus helplessly dragged out of the company, subjected to the scornful and mocking glances of every employee. Surprisingly, as if she could read his mind, she whispered softly, just for him to hear, "Don't worry, I have it." That night, Park Jin-woo of Taewa Chemicals popped a bottle of premium champagne. In front of him were the video of Kang Tae-jun and Yoon Seo-ah's violent argument and documents detailing the chaos within Jinsung Group. At that moment, Kang Tae-jun felt a part of the immense anxiety that had been crushing him lift. He let go, entrusting everything to her, and plunged into the deep, dark sea of unconsciousness. Ha 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 ha! That serves you right, Kang Tae-jun. You're still just a rookie. An entire empire shaken because you brought in the wrong woman. Thud. He trembled with delight. The scene of Kang Tae-jun casting out Yoon Seo-ah proved that his plan had been a perfect success. Now Kang Tae-jun was isolated, having lost the partner he trusted most. The core data of JS1 was in his hands. Everything was going according to his will. The cabin shook violently with the loud bang of the massive aircraft hitting the runway. Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport. The plane had arrived at its destination a little ahead of the promised 40 minutes. Outside the window, a strange, snowy Alaskan landscape unfolded. He had no doubt about his victory. He was completely unaware that the breakup between Kang Tae-jun and Yoon Seo-ah was a perfectly orchestrated act to lure him deeper into a trap. He savored the arrogant leisure of a predator looking down at his caught prey and filled his wine glass again. He was completely oblivious to the fact that the real hunters were now slowly closing in on his neck. Even before the doors opened, ambulances and airport security were waiting on the runway. As soon as the doors were ajar, paramedics in white coats rushed into the cabin with a stretcher. A quiet residential area on the outskirts of Seoul. Yoon Seo-ah, her face hidden under an old hoodie, stared at the blue light of her laptop screen. This was a secret safe house that Kang Tae-jun had prepared in advance. Although she had been branded a traitor and dishonorably cast out of Jinsung Group, her eyes showed no sign of defeat. Instead, they burned even more sharply. The world thought she was finished, but her real war was just beginning. Where is the patient? In front of her were dozens of encrypted data windows. The core data of JS1, which Park Jin-woo believed he had stolen. But in reality, it was a bait that Kang Tae-jun and Yoon Seo-ah had prepared. The real data was securely stored behind several layers of security. And what Park Jin-woo had taken was a subtly manipulated fake dataset with a special tracking code, a Trojan horse. Over here. You've taken the bait. Park Jin-woo. Yoon Seo-ah immediately directed them to Kang Tae-jun. As the paramedics took over, she briefed them on the situation without a moment's hesitation. Yoon Seo-ah had finally succeeded in infiltrating the enemy's server. She was now reverse tracing the data Park Jin-woo had stolen, drawing a map of Taewa Chemicals' secret server network. It was like moving one step at a time toward the center of a giant spiderweb. It was a dangerous tightrope walk, but she wasn't afraid. Patient is a 35-year-old male, Kang Tae-jun. He showed sudden respiratory distress and convulsions about 45 minutes ago. Loss of consciousness, accompanied by cyanosis. Oxygen saturation dropped to 85%. I immediately provided oxygen and assisted breathing with an ambu bag. AED analysis showed no need for defibrillation. Current blood pressure is 90/60 and pulse is weak, about 50 beats per minute. At the same time, Kang Tae-jun was playing the role of a besieged king in the Jinsung Group chairman's office. The board of directors pressured him day after day, and the media questioned his leadership, but he was unwavering. At night, he would communicate secretly with Yoon Seo-ah at the safe house, avoiding all surveillance. Her report was concise and professional. The head of the emergency medical team looked at her in surprise. Her knowledge and experience were far beyond what was expected of a typical flight attendant. "What's the situation?" Kang Tae-jun's voice came through the encrypted channel, low and calm. "Understood. Excellent work. I'm almost there, but something is strange. Chairman." He gave a brief compliment and immediately began to assess the patient's condition. While they attached various medical devices to Kang Tae-jun and moved him onto the stretcher, the cabin became noisy again. "What is it?" Just then, a man rushed from the economy section. It was Kim Min-jun, Kang Tae-jun's chief of staff. He had heard the news of the commotion in first class and had hurried over. Chairman Park Jin-woo's obsession. It doesn't seem like a simple corporate rivalry. It feels personal, as if he holds a deep grudge. It seems he wants to destroy the Jinsong Group itself, not just the JS1 project. "Chairman, what in the world happened, Chairman?" Yoon Seo-ah's words made Kang Tae-jun fall silent for a moment. He had been wondering the same thing. Park Jin-woo's attacks had gone far beyond the bounds of business. There was a raw hatred within it, not a rational calculation. He cried out Kang Tae-jun's name, his face pale with worry, but the unconscious Kang Tae-jun gave no reply. The chief of staff's eyes were filled with despair and bewilderment. Dig into his past, there might be something we're missing. The paramedics quickly carried Kang Tae-jun on the stretcher out of the cabin. Passengers and crew members made way, watching him with sad eyes. As Kim Min-jun was about to follow in a daze, he felt a gentle tug on his arm. At Kang Tae-jun's order, Yoon Seo-ah's investigation took a new turn. While continuing to delve into Taiwan Chemical's server, she also began to sift through decades-old newspaper articles and corporate documents. She was searching for the origin of Park Jin-woo's hatred. Wait a moment. After days and nights of relentless searching, she found a small clue in a dusty digital archive. It was a small news article from 30 years ago about a small chemical company that had gone bankrupt. The company's name was Daehan Chemicals, and the CEO's name was Park Sang-cheol. Yoon Seo-ah had quietly taken hold of him through the confused crowd. Her hand was still gloved, and a plastic bag she had secured earlier was hidden within it. Yoon Seo-ah's heart began to beat faster. She immediately checked Park Jin-woo's family records. His father's name, Park Sang-cheol. The puzzle pieces were falling into place. What is this? She meticulously traced Daehan Chemicals' bankruptcy process. At the time, most of the articles had treated the incident as a successful M&A case for Jinsong Group. The articles praised the exceptional business acumen of Kang Man-hee, Kang Tae-jun's father and the former chairman, who had taken over the group at a young age. But Yoon Seo-ah sensed a dark truth hidden behind the facade of this glorious success story. Kim Min-jun looked at her with a wary expression. She painstakingly went through Daehan Chemicals' financial statements, Jinsong Group's acquisition proposal, and related lawsuits from that time. And she finally discovered a shocking fact. Chairman Kang Man-hee hadn't simply acquired Daehan Chemicals. He had intentionally pushed the company into bankruptcy to steal the core technology it had been developing. And then he had gobbled up the company at a rock-bottom price. The business genius known to the media was, in fact, a predator who had built his empire on the blood and tears of others. Yoon Seo-ah quickly scanned the area. She saw Park Jin-woo getting ready to deplane with the other passengers, confirming that his gaze was not on them. She lowered her voice as she placed the bag in Kim Min-jun's hand. "This can't be. This is the water cup Chairman Kang Tae-jun drank from right before he collapsed. Don't tell anyone. And have it analyzed at the most trustworthy lab you know. It might not be ordinary water." Yoon Seo-ah sat frozen, holding her now cold coffee cup. The truth was far more sordid than she had ever imagined. Kim Min-jun's eyes widened. He instantly understood what she was implying. This might not be a simple accident. A cold shiver ran down his spine. He looked at the young flight attendant again. Her face was calm, her eyes unwavering. She was the only one in this scene of chaos who had grasped the true nature of the situation. With a trembling hand, she clicked on the last article. It was a short obituary stating that Park Sang-cheol, the CEO of Daehan Chemicals, had taken his own life at his home a week after the company's final bankruptcy. In one corner of the article, there was a small picture of a sad-looking young boy. That boy was the current Park Jin-woo. Oh, thank you. Truly, thank you. I'll repay this favor. Everything became clear. Park Jin-woo's motive was not simple business greed. It was a desperate revenge plot, prepared over a lifetime by a boy who had lost his father and everything his family owned. He wasn't just trying to take the JS1 project from Kang Tae-jun. He was trying to inflict the same pain, the same despair, the same ruin that his father had gone through. There will be plenty of time for that later. For now, saving the chairman is the priority. And please don't tell anyone you saw me, especially not Chairman Park Jin-woo, who is deplaning over there. That night, Yoon Seo-ah sent all the materials she had found to Kang Tae-jun. After reviewing the documents, Kang Tae-jun was silent for a long time. Only his ragged breathing could be heard through the communication channel. To him, his father had always been a respectable hero. But now, he was faced with the ugly truth hidden behind the hero's mask. In the face of this terrible reality that his father's sins had returned as a blade of revenge to haunt him, he fell into deep shock and confusion. Her gaze pointed to where Park Jin-woo was. Kim Min-jun understood everything. He bowed his head deeply without a word. In that brief moment, a deeper bond and unspoken promise were forged between the two of them. Kim, find the last factory manager of Daehan Chemicals immediately. Do whatever it takes. Kim Min-jun hid the bag deep inside his coat and hurried after Kang Tae-jun out of the plane. Only after he was completely gone did Yoon Seo-ah let out the long-held breath. As the tension left her body, her legs felt weak. Kang Tae-jun gave the order to Kim Min-jun. He had to confirm the truth for himself. Yoon Seo-ah, are you okay? A fellow attendant asked, approaching her with a concerned look. A few days later, a gray-haired old man who had been found after a long search sat in front of Kang Tae-jun. He was a living witness to the end of Daehan Chemicals. With a trembling voice, he recounted the truth of that day, 30 years ago. How Chairman Kang Man-hee had deceived CEO Park Sang-chol and stolen the technology. How he had manipulated the media to sway public opinion in his favor. And how tragically CEO Park Sang-chol had collapsed while desperately trying to save his company until the very end. Only then did she realize how much strength she had exerted. But her mission wasn't over yet. Mr. Park, he was a truly good man. He cared for his employees like family and was very proud of his technology. But, in front of the giant Goliath that was the Jinsong Group, he could not be David. How heartbroken he must have been. In front of his young son. She put on her flight attendant smile again and, as if nothing had happened, began helping the remaining passengers deplane. Her eyes met with Park Jin-woo's as he left the aircraft. He looked at her with a feigned concern. Tears welled up in the old man's eyes. Oh dear. I wonder if Chairman Kang will be all right. What a terrible thing. You've worked so hard. Young lady. After hearing everything, Kang Tae-jun silently clenched his fist. His nails dug into his palm, drawing blood, but he felt no pain. His respect for his father was shattered, and in its place, an unbearable shame and fury surged. But he also realized something at the same time. This fight was no longer just about protecting his empire. It was a fated struggle to correct the mistakes of his father's generation and break this vicious cycle of revenge. His voice was filled with false sympathy. But in the depths of his eyes, Yoon Seo-ah saw a subtle mix of annoyance that his plan hadn't gone perfectly, and relief that it had still succeeded. Kang Tae-jun and Yoon Seo-ah now finally understood who their real enemy was. They weren't just fighting a business rival, they were fighting a vengeful demon who had lived his entire life in a fire of hatred. An unpredictable and, most of all, a dangerous opponent with nothing to lose. The battlefield had become more complex and dangerous. This was no longer a simple battle between good and evil. It was a brutal fight where past sin and present revenge were intertwined, and no one could guarantee victory. Yoon Seo-ah bowed politely. The living room of the secret safe house was filled with a heavy silence. It was already late at night, but the lights were still on. Kang Tae-jun was slumped on the sofa, his eyes closed. The weight of his father's sins was a heavy burden on his shoulders. The fact that the empire he had spent his life protecting and building was, in fact, constructed on someone else's blood, and tears plunged him into deep self-loathing. Thank you for your concern. Chairman, we only did our best. Yoon Seo-ah sat beside him without a word. She didn't offer him any comforting words. She knew that what he needed right now wasn't clumsy sympathy, but time to face his emotions and stand on his own 2 feet. She simply and quietly brewed a cup of warm tea and placed it on the table in front of him. The faint warmth rising from the teacup seemed to warm the cold air of the room. Her voice was that of a perfectly ordinary flight attendant. Park Jin-woo, not sensing anything special about her, smiled with satisfaction and left the plane. He had no idea what he had overlooked. After a long silence, Kang Tae-jun finally spoke. His voice was lower and more hoarse than usual. The cold Alaskan wind blew into the cabin. Yoon Seo-ah silently clenched her fist as she listened to the distant siren of the ambulance. In the midst of the chaos, her hands had saved a man's life and, at the same time, handed over the first key to the truth. The prelude to a massive war had just begun. How should I do? 6 months later, at the penthouse office of Jinsung Group's headquarters in Gangnam, Seoul. Kang Tae-jun stood silently, looking down at the city's nightscape through the large glass window. It was hard to believe he had been at the brink of death in an Alaskan hospital's intensive care unit just a few days ago. He looked perfectly returned to his former self, the shrewd, cool-headed chairman. He held a crystal glass of strong whiskey in his hand. But instead of drinking, he was merely listening to the cold sound of the ice clinking against the glass. It was more a lament than a question. On his desk lay a report, analysis of residue in water cup. Below it was an unfamiliar chemical name, a modified compound of tetrodotoxin. It was a lethal substance, an artificially cultivated and modified version of the pufferfish toxin known as tetrodotoxin, capable of paralyzing the nervous system and inducing cardiac arrest with just a small amount. It was a perfect assassination poison, leaving virtually no trace and making death appear to be from natural causes. "You are not your father," Yoon Seo-ah said quietly. "As I thought, it was him." The opportunity to right the wrongs of the past is only given to those who live in the present. This fight is no longer about revenge on Chairman Park Jin-woo. It has become a battle with yourself. Kang Tae-jun's voice was as cold as ice. The report was the result of an analysis Kim Min-jun had requested from a top private laboratory in the United States. His suspicions had been confirmed. This was an obvious attempted murder, and the treacherous face of Park Jin-woo loomed in his mind as the mastermind. Her words were like a sharp knife, cutting through his chaotic mind. She was right. He could no longer run away. He could no longer hide behind his father's shadow or turn a blind eye to his past sins. He had to end this with his own hands. He closed his eyes. He remembered the last moments before he lost consciousness, the suffocating pain, the resolute and calm eyes, and the voice that whispered that everything would be okay and that the evidence was secure. Yoon Seo-ah. As soon as he had deplaned, he had instructed Kim Min-jun to find out everything about her. Kang Tae-jun slowly opened his eyes. His gaze was no longer confused. After deep contemplation, he had become harder and colder. "Chairman, may I come in?" "You're right. I will end this wretched cycle with my own hands. To do that, we need decisive evidence to prove Park Jin-woo's current crimes. Evidence that he personally ordered the development of the poison and the theft of the technology." Kim Min-jun opened the door carefully. He held another envelope in his hand. "We need an insider." Yoon Seo-ah finished his sentence. "This is the file on Ms. Yoon Seo-ah, someone who is deep in Chairman Park Jin-woo's inner circle, someone who knows all his secrets. We need to get that person on our side." Kang Tae-jun gestured for the documents without a word. He put down his whiskey glass and opened the envelope. Inside were Yoon Seo-ah's resume, her personnel record, and a few photographs. Their eyes met in the air. Their thoughts were focused on the same person, Dr. Lee Seok-hun, the head of Daewoo Chemical's secret lab, Chemitech. She was 28 years old, a senior flight attendant with K-Air for 5 years. Since joining, she had consistently been rated as an excellent employee, especially for her crisis management and customer satisfaction. It was a seemingly ordinary resume, but Kang Tae-jun's gaze lingered on one section, special remarks. Dr. Lee Seok-hun was a man known as a genius in the Korean chemical industry, but despite his reputation, he was an extremely timid and introverted person. According to the data Yoon Seo-ah had obtained through her hacking, he had been coerced by Park Jin-woo to participate in inhumane research and had recently been under constant threat and surveillance from him. The fact that his son had been in a hit-and-run accident was likely a warning from Park Jin-woo. Served 4 years as a medic in the Air Force Special Forces, Dr. Lee Seok-hun must be terrified right now. Chairman Park Jin-woo has probably turned him into a perfect puppet. It won't be easy to approach him. Kang Tae-jun said, his voice laced with concern. A faint smile touched his lips. He was right. Her professional first aid and leadership in a crisis could not have been acquired from simple flight attendant training alone. She wasn't just a graceful sky maiden. She was a hidden warrior who had experienced a battlefield. That's why I have to go myself. I need to meet her. Yoon Seo-ah's voice was firm. Kang Tae-jun said quietly, I will meet him and persuade him. I will make him risk everything he has and join our side. I have already contacted her. We have an appointment for tomorrow evening at the location you specified. It's too dangerous. Park Jin-woo is after you. The moment you move, you'll become a target. As always, Kim Min-jun was one step ahead. More than just professional concern, there was a personal emotion in Kang Tae-jun's voice. He no longer saw her as a simple partner. Unknowingly, she was becoming his greatest weakness. Good. And only you and I are to know about this. You can't trust anyone else in the group. There's a rat somewhere on the inside. I know it's dangerous, but this is something I have to do. Please trust me and command the situation from here. Chairman. Understood, Chairman. Yoon Seo-ah looked straight into his eyes. There was no fear in her gaze, only a firm resolve. Kang Tae-jun could no longer stop her. He decided to trust her judgment. Kim Min-jun bowed his head and quietly left the office. Left alone, Kang Tae-jun looked at Yoon Seo-ah's photo again. In her ID photo, she wore a neat uniform and smiled faintly. She looked like an ordinary, kind young woman. But he now knew that behind that soft smile, a will of steel and a brilliant mind were hidden. A few days later, Yoon Seo-ah went to the provincial city where the Chemitech lab was located, disguised as a normal graduate student. Over several days, she explored the area around the lab, mapping out Dr. Lee Seo-kun's daily routine. He rarely left the lab or his house, and Park Jin-woo's watchers always shadowed him. He made a decision to exact revenge on Park Jin-woo and protect his empire. He needed a new weapon, the sharpest blade that could strike at the enemy's weak spot, an unexpected force, and Yoon Seo-ah was the only person who met all the criteria. Instead of confronting him directly, Yoon Seo-ah decided to exploit his weakest point, his son. She approached his son, who was in the hospital with a cast on his leg from the hit and run, as a volunteer. For a few days, she read books and talked with the boy, naturally easing his guard. The following evening, at the top-floor sky lounge of a hotel overlooking the Seoul city lights, Yoon Seo-ah sat at the appointed table, gazing out the window. Since the incident in Alaska a few days prior, she had been on special leave from the company and had returned to her normal routine. But her mind was far from at ease. Although she had heard that Chairman Kang Tae-jun had recovered, the immense event had left an indelible mark on her life. And finally, the opportunity came. It was the day Dr. Lee Seo-kun visited his son alone. Yoon Seo-ah feigned a chance encounter with him in the hospital hallway. She asked herself over and over why she had felt compelled to help him and why she had risked everything to secure the evidence. It wasn't simply a matter of professional duty. It was her inability to tolerate injustice, and the look in a man's eyes who had refused to give up on life even at the brink of death, that had moved her. "I'm sorry. Are you okay?" she said, pretending to be startled as she helped him up. "I hope I haven't kept you waiting." Dr. Lee Seo-kun was wary of the stranger, but seeing that she had come from his son's room, he briefly let his guard down. A low, smooth voice made Yoon Seo-ah turn her head. Kang Tae-jun was standing opposite her. The pale, pained man from the plane was nowhere to be seen. Dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, he exuded a powerful presence, as if he were commanding the entire space. "Oh, you're the volunteer student from my son's room." "No, not at all. Chairman." "Yes, doctor. Your son is very smart and kind." Yoon Seo-ah stood up and gave a slight bow. During their short conversation, Yoon Seo-ah secretly slipped a tiny memory chip into his hand. Her movement was executed in a split second, in a blind spot for the CCTV. Dr. Lee Seo-kun was startled by the cold sensation in his hand, but she simply smiled and walked past him as if nothing had happened. "How is your health?" That night, back in his lab, Dr. Lee Seo-kun's hands trembled as he plugged the memory chip into his laptop. The chip contained a single video file. In the video, Park Jin-woo was giving a shocking order to someone to eliminate Dr. Lee Seo-kun. "Dr. Lee is useless now. Get rid of him cleanly. Don't forget to make it look like an accident." The warning from Yun Seo-ah that Park Jin-woo would use him and then throw him away had appeared as a terrible reality before his eyes. Thanks to you, Ms. Yoon, Dr. Lee Seok-hoon's entire body shook like a leaf. He realized that he had been a pawn in a monster's game and that his own life was now in danger. Kang Tae-jun smiled gently and gestured for her to sit. He took the seat opposite her and ordered wine from the waiter. A brief, awkward silence passed between them. Kang Tae-jun was the first to break it. Just then, a message arrived in his encrypted private email. The sender was Yun Seo-ah. How did you know that I had been poisoned? I can guarantee your and your family's safety. Doctor, if you only have the courage to reveal the truth you hold, I will be waiting tomorrow night at 11 p.m. behind the second research building, by the waste disposal site. This is your last chance to live. His question was direct. Yun Seo-ah briefly looked into his eyes. They were deep and sharp, as if they could see right through her. She instinctively knew that lies or excuses would not work. The next night, at the appointed location, Yun Seo-ah hid in the darkness, holding her breath. As the time approached, her heart pounded. Would he come? Would he overcome his fear of Park Jin-woo and join her side? Your symptoms were different from a typical heart condition. The bluish discoloration of your lips and the rapid paralysis of your respiratory muscles are classic signs of a neurotoxin. And Chairman Park Jin-woo's expression was just too unnatural. Time passed, and she heard a faint sound of footsteps in the distance. It was Dr. Lee Seok-hoon, his face a picture of anxiety. He looked around nervously as he approached. Her answer was calm and logical. Kang Tae-jun nodded with a satisfied look. Who are you? As I thought. I wasn't wrong about you. You're no ordinary flight attendant, Ms. Yun Seo-ah. I am the person who will save you from a monster's clutches. Yun Seo-ah emerged from the shadows. He slid an envelope across the table. It was the file containing her military service record. Yun Seo-ah wasn't surprised. She had expected him to find out everything about her. How can I trust you? Let me get to the point. I am in the middle of a war. I am fighting an enemy who attacks me in a cowardly and dirty way. And to win this war, I need your help. Ms. Yun Seo-ah. You don't have a choice right now, Doctor. You can either continue to live as Chairman Park Jin-woo's slave and then be discarded, or you can start a new life with me. His voice was low, but the weight behind his words was not. She looked straight into his eyes. Her voice had a power that overwhelmed him. What can I do to help you? Give me everything you have. The research log, the experimental data, and the recording of his voice that proves his crimes. In exchange, I will be responsible for you and your family's lives. Become my person. Dr. Lee Seok-hoon hesitated for a long time. Countless thoughts crossed his mind. But in the end, he remembered his son's face. He didn't want to live as a father who was ashamed of himself anymore. He took out a small external hard drive from inside his coat and handed it to Yun Seo-ah. It contained a complete record of all the illegal research that had been carried out under Park Jin-woo's command over the past few years. Kang Tae-jun's words widened Yun Seo-ah's eyes. Please, protect my family. I'm not talking about a simple secretary or bodyguard. I need you to be my eyes and ears, my shadow. I need someone who can see what I can't, hear what I can't, and end this war with me. My enemies could be among the people I trust most, or they could be in places I would never expect. That's why I need you. Someone whom no one would suspect, yet who possesses an exceptional ability. I promise. It was an offer beyond imagination. The chairman of South Korea's most powerful conglomerate was proposing a partnership with a normal flight attendant, a partnership that would risk his life and his destiny. It was an invitation into a dangerous and unpredictable world, completely different from the peaceful and stable life she had known. The moment she received the hard drive, Yun Seo-ah knew that victory in this long battle was finally within her reach. She had acquired the most powerful weapon to bring down Park Jin-woo's empire, the dagger that would pierce his heart. Why should I accept this offer? I only did my job, Yun Seo-ah asked, trying to stay composed. Back at the safe house, Kang Tae-jun was waiting for her. He had been up all night, and a look of relief washed over his face when he saw that she had returned safely. I will compensate you as you wish, be it money, honor, or whatever you desire. But I offer you a greater reward than that. You did it. Kang Tae-jun leaned forward and looked straight into her eyes. Yes, now, It's time to end all of this. The chance to realize justice. The chance to unmask corrupt power and pass judgment on a cowardly evil. I saw it in your eyes. Ms. Yoon Seo-ah. That hot anger that cannot tolerate injustice. I know you are not someone who moves for money. You are the same kind of person as me. They looked at each other in silence, having navigated this treacherous journey together. Their relationship had grown far beyond a simple partnership. They had become the only two people who understood each other's pain and could rely on one another. The final battle was all that remained. His last words pierced through Yoon Seo-ah's heart. He had seen straight through to the deepest part of her nature. During her military service, she had been forced to leave with a dishonorable discharge for fighting against an unjust order. She had always dreamed of a just society, but she had been frustrated by the immense wall of reality. Now, the man in front of her was offering her that very opportunity. The night before the final confrontation, the air in the safe house was thick with tension, like the calm before a storm. The large screen in the living room displayed the contents of the hard drive that Dr. Lee Sok-hun had given them. It was Pandora's box, proving Park Jin-woo's crimes. A recording of his voice ordering the illegal development of the poison, manipulated clinical trial data, and an accountant's ledger that laid bare the flow of his slush fund. The evidence was perfect. Two selves fiercely clashed in her mind, the rational self that wanted a normal life, and the passionate heart that wanted to fight against injustice. She was silent for a long time. The glittering city lights outside the window reflected in her wavering eyes. This is enough to completely ruin Park Jin-woo in society. Finally, she made up her mind and raised her head. Her eyes no longer wavered. Kang Tae-jun spoke with a cold fury, but his expression was far from that of a man on the brink of victory. The heavy burden of his father's sins still weighed on him. All right, I accept your offer, but I have a condition. Yoon Seo-ah was making the final preparations. She was editing all the evidence into a single video. This was the decisive blow that would unmask Park Jin-woo. On a stage where all of South Korea's media and business world would be watching the Jinseong Group's regular shareholder meeting. Her fingers danced gracefully over the keyboard as her concentration reached its peak. Tell me, everything is ready. I will release this video the moment the shareholder meeting begins. Simultaneously, Chief of Staff Kim Min-jun will hand over all the original documents to the Special Prosecution Team. Chairman Park Jin-woo will be arrested at the shareholder meeting. Her voice was calm but filled with firm conviction. I want to work as your partner, not your subordinate. All information must be shared with me transparently, and we will make the final decisions together. And when this is over, I will return to my old life. You've worked hard. A smile once again spread across Kang Tae-jun's face. It was the exact answer he had been looking for. Kang Tae-jun spoke quietly. Walking toward her, he gently placed his hand on her shoulder. Her body trembled faintly from the exhaustion of having stayed up for days. Welcome to the partnership, Miss Yoon Seo-ah. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day. He raised his wine glass and offered it to her. Yoon Seo-ah raised her own glass. The two crystal glasses clinked with a clear sound. It was the signal marking the beginning of a dangerous alliance and a pledge to embark on a great revenge. From that moment on, Yoon Seo-ah's life was on a completely different trajectory. The ordinary flight attendant Yoon Seo-ah was gone, and the chairman of Jinseong Group's most secret partner was born. You too! You should get some sleep. The next morning, Yoon Seo-ah submitted her resignation to K-Air. Ending her 5 years of flying was surprisingly easy. Her heart was already set on a new battlefield. As per her agreement with Kang Tae-jun, she received the official title of Special Aide to the Chairman of Jinseong Group. But her true mission existed far beyond the paper title. Deep in the shadows, Yoon Seo-ah looked up at him. The shadow of deep fatigue was also visible on his face. They smiled faintly at each other, their tired faces a mirror of their shared journey. In the middle of this dangerous battle, they were the only ones who could lean on each other. The Jinseong Group headquarters was a massive glass fortress in the heart of Seoul, and as Yoon Seo-ah entered the lobby, an absolute silence, broken only by the click of her heels on the marble floor, enveloped her. Everyone was dressed in expensive suits and moved busily, but their faces were expressionless. This was a jungle of fierce survival, and she had just set foot in it as a stranger. Kang Taijun led her to a small bar in the corner of the living room. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handing her a crystal glass filled with an amber liquid. He looked out at the dark city. Chief of Staff Kim Min-jun personally guided her to the top floor where the chairman's office was. As the elevator ascended, he spoke in a gentle yet somewhat guarded voice. "When all this is over, what do you want to do, Ms. Yoon? The chairman trusts you implicitly. I, too, am eternally grateful that you saved his life. But this place will be unlike anything you've ever experienced." His question was a little out of place. Yoon Seo-ah pondered for a moment. It was both advice and a warning. As Kang Tae-jun's most loyal aide, he couldn't hide his complex feelings toward her, a mix of wariness, curiosity, and a hint of jealousy toward this woman who had suddenly appeared and gained the chairman's absolute trust. "I don't know. I just want to return to a normal life. Fly on a plane again. Travel to different parts of the world, and sometimes meet up with friends to chat. Little things like that." "I understand. Mr. Kim, I look forward to learning from you." A hint of longing was in her voice. The ordinary days she had enjoyed before she was caught in this massive ordeal. Yoon Seo-ah responded with a humble yet dignified attitude. She understood his caution. She knew better than anyone that trust was earned through actions, not words. "I've put too much on your shoulders. I'm sorry." Next to the chairman's office, a separate office was prepared for her. Unlike the large and luxurious chairman's office, hers was practical and modern. One entire wall was made of smart glass, which was usually opaque to block the outside view but could be turned transparent to see inside the chairman's office when needed. Sincere regret was in his voice. The chairman gave special instructions for this space to ensure your complete security and independent work environment. You have been given the highest level of security clearance to access all the necessary data. No, this was my choice, and I don't regret it. Yoon Seo-ah was briefly surprised by Kim Min-jun's explanation. This was an unprecedented privilege. It showed her just how much Kang Tae-jun trusted her and how important this mission was. Yoon Seo-ah looked straight into his eyes. Her gaze was unwavering. She knew that through this ordeal, she had gained something more precious than money or fame. She had found the courage to fight against injustice and a deep trust in one man. Her first task was to analyze the vast amount of data Kang Tae-jun had given her. The list of all passengers on flight KO86 with their seating chart, a timeline of Kang Tae-jun's official and unofficial schedules during his New York trip, the profiles of everyone involved in the M&A negotiation, and the Jinsong Group intelligence team's analysis report on Taehua Chemicals, led by Park Jin-woo and its subsidiaries. The information was divided into dozens of folders, a volume that would take an ordinary person days to get through. A comfortable silence fell between them again. As they sipped their whiskey, they felt each other's presence without a word. The camaraderie they had built while fighting together in the dark had now transformed into a deeper emotion. Yoon Seo-ah poured herself a cup of coffee and sat down. She didn't start reading the documents immediately. Instead, she brought over a large whiteboard and wrote, "Attempted assassination of Kang Tae-jun" in the center. Then, she began to create a mind map, listing keywords like suspects, method, motive, and accomplices around it. This was the method she had used during her military service to plan complex operations and analyze information. Kang Tae-jun was the first to break the silence. He put down his glass and gently took her hand. His hand was large and warm. Her first subject of analysis was people. She organized the passenger list into an Excel file, classifying the data based on each person's occupation, nationality, age, and their relationship with Kang Tae-jun and Park Jin-woo. Finding a meaningful connection among the hundreds of names was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Seo-ah, unaware of the passing time, she was completely focused on the monitor. Lunchtime had long passed, but she didn't even think about getting up. Her eyes scanned the information like a scanner, and her hands moved tirelessly over the keyboard, cross-analyzing the data. He called her by her first name for the first time. Yoon Seo-ah's heart skipped a beat. "Why aren't you eating when this fight is over? Will you give me a chance?" Kang Tae-jun had approached her without her noticing, and spoke in a low voice. He stood with his arms crossed, watching her analysis on the whiteboard with great interest. His voice was serious. It contained the sincere confession of a man, without any calculation or intention. "I lost track of time," she said, finally rotating her stiff shoulders. "I have hurt you a lot." I dragged you into a dangerous situation and made you face the world's criticism. But you never once resented me. Instead, you embraced even my deepest darkness. Without you, I would have likely collapsed under the weight of this truth. Have you made any progress? He took another step closer. The distance between them was now close enough for their breaths to mingle. It's still murky, but I found a few interesting things. I'm not proposing to you out of gratitude for saving my life. As a man, I want to start a new life with you. I want to leave all the burdens of the past behind and enjoy a normal kind of happiness with you. Will you? Go with me. She stood up and walked to the whiteboard. His voice trembled slightly. He was a man who had everything in the world, yet he was utterly vulnerable in front of the woman he loved. First, the poison, a modified tetrodotoxin. Manufacturing and distributing such a specialized toxin is not something a typical criminal organization can do. There must be a professional organization with chemical knowledge and facilities behind it. Tehua Chemicals is the most likely suspect, but there is no direct evidence. Yoon Seo-ah's eyes welled up again. But this time, they were not tears of sadness or relief. They were the tears of the happiest woman in the world. She continued, "Yes, I will." Second, the perpetrator. In the confined space of a plane, an accomplice on the inside is essential to administer the poison to you at the exact time. The chief flight attendant who was in charge of the first-class cabin, especially the one who directly brought you the water, is the most suspicious. But until we find proof that he was bribed, we cannot make a move. We could end up cutting off the snake's tail and losing the body. At her answer, Kang Tae-jun's face lit up with a smile as bright as a child's. He gently slipped the ring onto her finger. The ring fit perfectly, as if it had belonged to her all along. Kang Tae-jun listened to her analysis in silence. Her deductions were sharp and logical. He stood up and held her close. The wind from the river and the distant sounds of the city became the perfect backdrop for their moment. So, what's your next plan? Thank you for coming to me. We must see the forest while also looking at each individual tree. Right now, I am reconstructing the whereabouts of every person on the suspect list in New York. Hour by hour, an unexpected intersection in their paths might be found. I'm focusing on the people around Chairman Park Jin-woo, in particular. Thank you for finding me. Her eyes were filled with certainty. Kang Tae-jun felt a strange sense of déjà vu, seeing his younger self in her. The persistence to pour everything into a goal and the cool-headed logic. He was once again certain that he had made the right choice. They stood, holding each other in silence, watching the beautiful night view of Seoul for a long time. Their relationship, which began in a life-or-death crisis 10,000 meters in the air, had overcome countless hardships and finally blossomed into a brilliant love. All right, tell me if you need anything. I'll mobilize all of the group's resources to support you. The storm had passed, and now, a dazzling future awaited them. A future they would build together. Their story was just beginning a new chapter. Thank you. First, I need internal data from one of Tehua Chemicals' subsidiaries called Chemitag on the surface. It's a new drug development lab, but there are a few suspicious things about it. Chemitech